I guess for a very long time now, I've wanted to, and I guess I've promised RETA members that I'd pull everything, my life's work into one place. And it's taken time. It's taken quite a bit of time because, it's been somewhat of a challenge to condense all that scouting, all that research, all those trips, all those deals into one place. And I guess how I kind of crystallized and what kind of gave it structure was to focus on what's really, really important. And, I think when we focus on what's really, really important, everything else just falls into place around it.
Who's this book for?
This book is for, first and foremost, this is for someone who's looking for a start. This is for someone who is looking for opportunity. This is for someone who's looking to enrich themselves both financially, enrich themselves in terms of adventure. This is for someone who feels insecurity, financial insecurity or uncertainty, because there are tools within this book that, for me, they've given me a life of freedom, and that's a life of eternal spring, always putting myself in a beautiful setting like this with weather that for me is just perfect. It's given me financial security. It's given me the comfort that if something goes badly sideways in one market where I'm invested or one place where I have a home, I know that there's other places I can go with my physical person and with my money. So it's just that freedom, I mean, we walked some of the oceanfront holes here, or well, I played and you walked with me yesterday, and just that sense of freedom I get from being unshackled from traffic, unburdened by financial stresses, but with the comforts and luxury that just come from having these choices. And I've built it all around a life of real estate investing. And for me, for the past 20 years, that's been international real estate investing, because I found out early, and I found out, in very, very clear and uncertain way, that when we open our mind and when we look beyond our hometown, our home state, and our home country, we find once in a lifetime opportunities. There's always a South Florida of the 1920s or the 1980s. There's always that set of circumstances playing out somewhere. There's always a Malibu of the 1950s. All we have to do is open our mind to travel, open our mind to pushing ourselves to explore how things happen, how things work in other places, and then we can just see the types of incredibly strong growth and capital appreciation and yields that we've seen in those various places that I've recommended over the past two decades plus. I mean, we're here in Portugal, where I've been successfully investing and have made a home over the past couple of years. I've come here from Ireland, and some of the gains we've seen in Ireland over the past decade. I mean, condos that I recommended a decade ago today sell for 3, even 3.5 times what they did a decade ago. But the really insane thing is that over that decade, each of those condos have been just throwing off these huge yields, as much as 15-16%, even more based on the original purchase price. So by putting ourselves in the right place at the right time with the right people, it can fundamentally change everyone's life the way it's changed mine.
You mentioned these big transformations. I know that in the book as well, you kind of hone in on specific locations where there are big transformations taking place right now, and where I know you and RETA members have done very well. Maybe tell us about a few of those places.
Yeah, so big transformations. That's where we're at. That's where this whole thing is at. And what I've done in the book is, first of all, I've tried to illustrate for everyone just how these transformations are, they're everywhere in our lives. They're everywhere in terms of how our countries are organized, how our societies are organized, how we work, how we play. But it's only just by stepping back and seeing how did this come to be that we realized that it was the result of a transformation. What was Florida? What was Florida until the rise of the automobile, until people could get in their cars, until interstate highways were built, and until they could drive? And that started in the 20s, and and people came in waves, and development came in waves, and bubbles came in waves, and scams came in waves. But throughout the whole entire thing, it was underpinned by a fundamental big idea. Big idea number one: there's really appealing weather in Florida, in particular in the winter, and in particular if you live somewhere cold like the Northeast or like Canada or like the Midwest. Florida weather is hugely appealing. Secondly, Florida has had an extremely benign and welcoming tax situation, so that's factor number two. And then you marry that, or you converge that with the path of progress, with the new infrastructure, with the technology change around, with the technology change of the automobile, and you pull it all together, and you've got this transformation. And that's the thing about our transformations: they don't just last for. This isn't a 3-year thing or a 7-year thing. These can be century-long transformations. In the case of Florida, that's what we're seeing. We saw Florida of the 1980s. Even in South Beach, Miami, they were literally offering free real estate in the 1980s. So this transformation came in waves, and it's been a century playing out. Today, the closest example, or the closest thing we have to that Florida transformation today, is Mexico's Riviera Maya, from Cancun, from just south of Cancun down to Tulum. And there, that big transformation started with a mix of technological innovation. This time it was the aeroplane and the rise of mass market air travel. We had the creation of a new international airport, so we had the physical infrastructure component. Then development came, resorts came, and more recently, and maybe the biggest accelerator of them all, has been a whole different type of technological change, and that's been like an IT change. The rise of Zoom, the rise of remote working technologies, and then COVID was the ultimate disruptor, and this disruptor was an accelerator because it changed the way we worked. It showed that competent, motivated, self-reliant people can be left alone to do their work, and those people again are being sucked in and attracted to beautiful places where they're welcomed, where they don't have traffic, where they don't have snow, where their dollars stretch a lot further, and where their life is just richer and freer. Freer from bad weather, freer from dampness, just free from whatever it is that holds us back. For me, weather was always a big thing, and I didn't even understand it. I didn't even really realize it until I hit my sweet spot of weather. Growing up, I had mild asthma, nothing too debilitating, but growing up in Ireland, it's a damp place, and in retrospect, and I only kind of recognize this in retrospect, my energy levels were low and general lust for life sluggish during those dreary winter months. And then the spring would come, and I'd be energized, and I'd have energy for exercise, energy for golf, energy to be creative. And that's the way I thought that was just the kind of the cycle of the year, until I realized I could put myself always in spring-like weather, and I could always have those levels of energy. And for me, that's been maybe it's the biggest gift of this 2-decade adventure, is that it puts me in places where I can sleep better, where I can feel fresher, where I can feel more energetic, where I can feel more productive, and that feeds into everything. That feeds into financial health, mental health, physical health, and all that helps us do a better job as investors.
Might be a good time to tell us where we are. So this is one of your bases, right?
Yeah, so this is one of my bases here. I'm in a beachfront community called Praia del Rey. Lisbon is an hour down that direction. I have been living here for a couple of years now. I scoured literally the entire Portuguese coast looking for the right location for me. So I've invested in Portugal's Algarve for profit, for financial motivation, but down there it's a bit busy for me. It's the fact that it's busy makes it such a great investment opportunity, but that's a downside for me and where I want to be. I want to be somewhere empty, broad, expansive, like here, where I can just leave my apartment, which is just there. My terrace is literally there, where I can be on the golf course, which is just over my right shoulder here, the oceanfront holes, where I can be on the beach. I have it all here. I think of it almost like a golden triangle: home, beach, golf, and I don't want much more than that. And of course, just this perfect spring-like weather. For me, the weather is perfect when I spend most of my time here, which is kind of broadly in spring and fall. When the peak summer months roll in, it's busier than I'd like here. So I just leave. I go to Ireland. That's my window when I want to spend time at home in Ireland with friends and family. And my home here, I rent it in July and August. It covers the entire costs of ownership, and by that I mean a mortgage. It covers all my insurances, my property taxes, covers my HOA fees, covers my garbage collection, it covers my annual dues to these two wonderful oceanfront golf courses here, and I mean it's living for free. And so I've had it for free. I use it all the time. It's very, very special to me, and I've not just had it for free, but because I bought it well, it's appreciated by, you know, probably about €100,000 over the last couple of years. And you know, the process for finding this place was interesting, because what I did was Idealista. It's a great listing site that has pretty much almost every listing in Portugal. And over the course of many months, I went, there's a map on the Idealista app. You can highlight an area, and I literally drew on the map and went the whole length of the Portuguese coast looking for a true beachfront community where I'd get, you know, everything that I have here. Now, here by no means is for everyone. You know, I mean, it's going to be too quiet for a lot of people. The weather's too mixed for a lot of people. But I think where my story in finding this place will help other people is by just showing the importance of ruthlessly profiling yourself and ruthlessly making your top criteria, and those become unmovable. You're going to have to make you're not going to get everything that you want as you run down through the lower priorities, but get the big things right, like my investing strategy, and you're going to be very, very happy.
I've been struck by the parallels with one of your other bases on this visit, which is in Cabo. And I know that, do you want to tell us about that condo and how that's played out?
Yeah, they say I've a type, and you know, a contact, actually, the first of my friends and kind of partners and real estate contacts who had been to both my places made the comment when he visited me in Cabo. It was like, you have a type, because he had visited me here on the Silver Coast. But back in 2015, I bought in a RETA members only deal in a community called Copala, just on the edge of Cabo San Lucas. So I bought with our members only pricing. Prices at launch for RETA members were about $336,000. The RETA formula is, you know, we get in members only pricing in terms pre-launch, extra special deep discounts. 3 years later, I took delivery, and my perspective on this deal changed pretty radically, because I was originally buying this condo just purely for investment. And I do a lot of this. I buy alongside RETA members in our RETA member only deals. And those, again, the primary motivation is financial. But I fell in love with this one, and I decided to make Cabo and this condo a place where I'd spend a significant part of my year, or certainly a significant part of my winters. And again, the deciding factor, or a deciding factor there, was the weather, the sense of space, the miles of empty beach I can walk on, the cool breezes. So, you know, that formula just works for me, and I think it's so important for anyone embarking on this journey that they figure out as early as possible what is it that works for you in terms of that lifestyle component. But you know, it's kind of funny how things go. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was in Montenegro on a scouting trip, and I opened my email, and it was a broker saying that he had two sets of clients interested in paying $600,000 plus for my condo or something similar. So in the end, it absolutely worked out as a financial investment. I'm not interested in selling. I'm going to keep it, and it's also one that's very, very difficult to sell because the rental income is just so strong from a condo like that. Now, condos like that rent for $3,500 per month, and this is part of a bigger story that we've seen again since COVID, is the rise of the long-term renter. You know, you go back 5-10 years ago, folks were nervous about renting long-term outside of their home country. They were worried about the legal environment. They were worried about the quality of tenants. But, you know, today you can go to Cabo San Lucas or Lagos in Portugal, and you can rent to the exact same people you'd rent to if you were renting condos near a tech hub in Austin, Texas, or near San Francisco. They're the same people. You know, these are people you can run background checks on, credit checks on. These are people whose employers you'll recognize. These are people whose employers you may even be a customer of. And that's a game changer, because the rise of the long-term renter means that we have a much more hands-off option too in terms of how we manage these investments.
That, you know, it's interesting because there's a timeliness to this book. It's just that this trend is on the rise, but this book couldn't have been arriving at a more timely moment, right? In terms, for anybody interested in real estate, interested in what you're talking about.
This is a moment of perfect storm. People say to me, what about inflation? What about the economy? What about the geopolitical situation? All of that plays into our advantage. So first of all, what you need to remember is what we have and what we're buying is something that's relatively scarce and more people want it. So what we have and what we buy as members of Real Estate Trend Alert and as real estate investors is condos and homes in internationalized places that are attracting more and more mobile people in from right across the world. So that's thing number one. This is a thing that demand is growing strongly for. Inflation. You know, you think inflation and you think these supply chain issues, you know, are disruptive. Heck yes, they're disruptive. They're unbelievably disruptive. You know, I walked into a car dealership here last weekend looking to order a car, and they said, you know, the best we can hope for is 2 years' time. The real estate and the real estate industry is no different. Real estate is a complex thing to physically put together. There's marble, there's plastic, there's labor, there's stuff that needs to get shipped right across the world. And then you add the bureaucratic components into that. There's also environmental licenses, there's construction licenses, and these things are backlogged because so many bureaucracies are just backlogged right across the world. So what does this mean? This means supply constraints. This means what we have or what we're buying is scarce, and there's going to be less of it produced in the future. So, I mean, this inflation and these supply constraints, they're just playing into scarcity, which plays into our hands because that's more demand chasing what we have, more demand to rent, more demand to buy, and these these constraints are just causing values to pop right across our beat. The right real estate is spiking. Values are increasing by 20-30% a year even. Rents are increasing at an even faster rate. I mean, the impact of the last couple of years on rental rates has just been astonishing. Double, treble in these desirable internationalized places. Again, whether that's Guanacaste in Costa Rica, whether it's Cabo San Lucas, whether it's Lagos in Portugal, you name it. The places that are desirable and welcoming in terms of standard of living, security, quality of life, cost of living, they're attracting more and more people, and that's not going to change.
Talk about incomes there. I know there's a chapter in your book, I think it's chapter 8, which is entirely about income. And I know that yield for you, yield is a critical thing. And for the first time ever, I believe, in this book, you've created a kind of, or sharing your tool, one of your tools for that.
Yeah, for a long time, I just kind of kept this tool to myself because it's so rudimentary, it's so basic, it's almost embarrassing, because I've got this thing, I've got this thing that people can get stuck in the algorithms, stuck in the very involved spreadsheets, and it becomes almost like an addiction. It's a distraction that takes them away from the core thing, which is a big idea, which is how can we buy for less than everyone else in a place that's seeing fast growing demand, and buy the right thing, whether that's a 2-bed condo or a 5-bed beachfront home or a piece of raw land. But for me, when it comes to making any investment in a finished piece of real estate, there is always a yield component. The extent to which there's a yield component can vary by the type of investment, whether I'm chasing capital appreciation or whether it's purely income focused, So I've invested in a range of things with a different yield perspective. So for example, in Brazil, I've invested in multifamily units with the expectation of grossing 18% plus per annum. And for that type of investment, you do want to see high yields, because over time the real estate is going to get degraded. You'll have depreciation issues. You'll have headaches. Right through to in my home market of Ireland, I still buy some rental properties, even though the yields there are only going to be in the range of 4 to 5%. But I think like lots of RETA members, I like the comfort of still having a foothold in my home market. But by running the yield numbers, every time I vet an opportunity to buy finished real estate, that yield number tells me something. I mean, once I can net an 8% yield over the medium to long term, full stop, then for me that's a good opportunity. Even if the real estate doesn't quite have the capital appreciation potential of other things I buy, if I feel there's almost guaranteed 8% indefinitely, I'm happy to just let that compound. Now, the thing is, in recent times, yields have just spiked dramatically. Again, these are yields that are based on RETA members only pricing. These are yields based on buying at deep discounted rates, and we're seeing long-term rental yields in places like Playa del Carmen in Mexico, again as high as 15 or 16%. On the beaches of Costa Rica, short-term rental yields as high as 20% gross, even as high as 22% gross on smaller, more entry price condos. So that yield number is very, very important, because what it tells me, it'll tell me very, very fast if the asset is just overpriced. And this is one of the reasons why I look at some of the world's most robust and strongest markets, and I look at yields of 1.9%. I go to Munich and I look at yields of 1.7 to 1.9%, and I'm just not going to buy an asset that the market says is only worth that level of a dividend. It's telling me that this opportunity is, I won't say maxed out, because we've seen many of these markets spike further, but that only a bubble or only frothiness will bring it higher. And if you're reliant on bubble or frothiness for your investment, that's not where. If I wanted that, I'd be in crypto. I'd be playing that game. But it tells me very fast if there's true value to be found.
So you mentioned crypto, but I know I saw this in your books where you don't own any stocks. You're all in on real estate, correct?
I'm all in on real estate now. I'm kind of in the process of making some small investments in small privately owned companies, but I only do that when I'm betting on a person and a big transformation, and it's completely speculative. It's a wild punt. I'm all in on real estate, and yet I view myself as being highly diversified, because I'm into a wide variety of categories of real estate, from car park, multifamily, vacation rentals for the Spanish and German market, vacation rentals for the US and Canadian market, rental portfolio in Ireland, which is dependent on a multinational driven economy. But yes, I'm all in on a basket and a variety of real estate that I believe puts me in a highly diversified position. My exposure is, I'm exposed to a global catastrophe, but it's hard to imagine, without getting into gold or precious metals or anything like that. It's hard to imagine a way that I could be more protected from anything but an absolute global catastrophe.
One of the tools that you delve into quite in depth in the book, and there's a lot of examples of how it's being used by people who know and how you use it yourself, is leverage. But I mean, for someone who doesn't really understand what that means and how to use it in real estate, can you give us the cliff notes, how it works?
Yeah, so I mean, leverage, it's a mortgage, it's buying with someone else's money. So for an example, there's down the coast from here, in the Algarve, there's a luxury community called Val de Lobo. a couple of years ago, I was able to buy a apartment there with no money down. So I was able to get a 100% mortgage. That's quite rare here in Portugal. You can get it when the property is a bank foreclosure. So I'm into the condo for no money except my closing costs plus some furnishing and little renovation. So all told, in a luxury community, the sticker price on that condo was €410,000. By the time I'm finished furnishing, paying my closing costs, my transfer taxes, I'm into it for about 40 grand. So that's how much cash I'm into the deal for. Roll on a short few months and roll on the market heating up because I'm buying in the right place at the right time and the right type of real estate. Condos like that are listing for 250, even 300,000 euros more. So all of a sudden, because of leverage, I've bought a 410,000 euro condo, but I'm only into it for 40,000. So all I'm into it for is 40,000, and I could sell it on for maybe 250 or 300,000 euros more. So again, ignoring the costs of selling. If I were to exit, I could be looking at a return of 5, 6, maybe even 7x my capital invested. So that fact that this investment was fully leveraged, that I'm into it for only 40,000 euros, not 450,000 euros, means I'm 5, 6 or 7xing my money rather than making a cash on cash return of 60 or 70% if it was fully cash funded. So that's the beauty of leverage. And we've been in a historically unprecedented interest rate environment where here in Portugal up to four months ago we've been able to rent for sub 1% rates. Obviously rates have risen and are rising, but we still have the opportunity to kind of lock in really low rates. And in terms of maximizing your IRR or cash on cash return, just leverage just becomes a game changer. And the concern about leverage is the costs around leverage and what happens if I have to stay in a deal for too long, and does the leverage and the interest start to really eat into the profit. And again, that's where the beauty of a benign and interest rate environment like we've seen is that we're borrowing at interest rates that are deep in negative territory. I mean, I've had a mortgage rate here of under 1% at a time when when inflation's running at 9%. I mean, that just makes no sense. But that's the way it's been, and that's a situation we can profit from once we buy right, because everything needs to be underpinned by a really strong deal. If the strong deal isn't in place, you're going to lose everything you've invested with a highly leveraged purchase of the wrong thing, because it also increases your risks. That 410,000 euro condo that I was into for 40 grand in closing costs. You know, if that condo is only worth 400,000 euros today, if it just stays put in value, then my entire investment is wiped. The entire 40 grand I put into it is wiped. So we see huge benefits on the upside, but it's a very, very cautionary tale, because I've seen a lot of people jump on deals because cheap finance, easy finance, 100% finance, and it's all just a sucker move. It's all a sucker move if the deal isn't right.
Talk about the right deal and how critical that is to everything, and underpins everything. So might be a good time for you to explain to us how exactly does real estate trend at work? How do these deals come together, and how do you bring them to people?
Yeah. So first, our RETA members only deal starts with a big idea. A big idea might be Montenegro may join the EU. It's at the tail end. You know, the border is 30 minutes from Dubrovnik in Croatia, which has seen just values absolutely soar over the past 2 decades. It makes no sense that when you cross the border from Dubrovnik area into Montenegro that you'll pay 30% of what you might pay in Croatia. So that might be a starting point. It would be a big idea. We look at the map, we see what's changed in the Balkans since the breakup of the former Yugoslavia, since the accession to the EU of a number of those countries, since the opening up of borders, since the arrival of peace. So there's all those transformations that we've observed, some of them from a distance, others like the transformation of Croatia. I had a ringside seat to in the early 2000s. And then we physically put boots on the ground. I have a tight, experienced team that I've put together over the past 2 decades. Very frequently, the idea will be first put to the test with a member of my team going and visiting, which will be, hey, this is our investment thesis. From what I can see, it holds up, and that will be the trigger for me to go. That'll be the trigger for me to go, put boots on the ground, and see if I believe there's a macro case for why real estate values are going to grow significantly over the next period of time. So the base for a RETA members only deal is that I expect that we'll double our cash invested over the next 5 years. So that's what a deal needs to be to cut RETA muster. So then I go, if the macro case holds together, then I will do a in-depth assessment as to what the best way to play the situation is. And by that I mean, do we buy finished condos? Do we buy raw land? Do we buy in one of the old towns? What's the play? If it's buying physical real estate, are we looking to buy 2-bed condos, studios, or big homes? What's the play? So then once I get a handle on what the best way to play the situation is, in the case of Montenegro right now, I believe it's to buy land, which is a very different play to the vast majority of places on our RETA beat. So once I've decided the best way to profit from the situation is to buy land, then it's how do we buy land? Who do we need to be talking to? what's the best mechanism to negotiate, who's the best lawyer to use, what set of contacts do I want? Because again, remember, this is all stuff I do for myself with my own money. So, you know, I'm on this journey, and, you know, I'm making these plays. In the case of other markets where, for example, the opportunity might be to, say, buy 2-bed condos, I identify who the strongest developers are with the best land bank. The land bank is absolutely critical. The developers I work with tend to be multi-generational, particularly in these kind of beach and resort towns in places like Costa Rica or Lagos in Portugal or Cabo San Lucas in Mexico or Playa del Carmen. I look for the strongest developers who've got the best land bank, because those developers are sitting on land that often is paid for a generation ago. So that gives them flexibility to being creative about doing the best community, and also to incentivizing us RETA members for our buying power. So then it's a conversation, and the quid pro quo is very simple. You know, I sit down with the developer and I say, this is who we are. We're this community we're this group of highly qualified, highly motivated investors. You give us a stellar deal, and we, over the course of a couple of hours, will absorb, you know, a very significant amount of your inventory. So that's the quid pro quo. Maybe the developer has a 400 condo community, and we get access to the first 150, and we get in at prices that are $77,000 or $123,000 less than what the launch price will be. We take care of it. It's allocated to members of our group, you know, in a fast couple of hours. The developer gets their sales, we get our big discounts, and then the developer goes off and launches to the retail market at much higher prices.
Why do developers give retail these deals? What's the catch?
There's no catch. I mean, developers give us these deals quite simply because it makes sense for their business. So a real estate development project is a complex equation with sales that are spread out over a period of time, with cash in spread out over a period of time, and cash out spread out over a period of time. And when you take a block of those sales and you move them to day zero, it just fundamentally moves the needle on the risk side of the equation for the project, and also on the cost side of the equation, and finally on the price that they can charge for that remaining inventory. So essentially, from just a pure financial model sense, we say to the developer, and take this block of sales that you had figured on spreading out over a period of a year or maybe 2 years, and condense it into one, maybe it's a 3-hour window, maybe it's a 23-hour window. You get all those sales up front. Now, that takes away the sales risk over this period of time. That takes away the entire marketing cost that you are going to have, because the developer now doesn't need to produce any brochures, doesn't need any billboards, they need none of that. They don't need a fancy showroom for these sales with that staff. So it takes a big cost component out of it, and it significantly reduces the risk, because any developer that's going about building sold units, that's such a less risky business than building units that will be sold over a period of time. So it's a true win-win-win. You know, this is a win for the developer, and it means so much for them that they can be much more aggressive with their pricing on the remaining inventory. So they have, you know, their RETA allocation of condos, that's squared away, that's sold. Now they can take their time and they can, I guess, not feel under pressure to sell the remaining inventory fast, which means that they can charge higher pricing. So it's a true win-win-win. But not every developer can do it. Not any developer has, I guess, the wiggle room in the numbers to make a deal RETA grade. So that's why the developers we work with tend to be multi-generational. They tend to be developing on land that they bought cheap a long time ago. That means that they've flexibility within their business model. And it's interesting, the psychology of development families that, you know, stay in business through multiple generations, you know, across multiple crises. These are also the types of developers we want to work with, because these are the types of developers that are looking for ways to de-risk their project. And, you know, there's no surer way to de-risk your real estate project than to get your sales in the bag from the get-go.
I remember you told a story about a developer whose partners brought in consultants after a RETA deal. That might be one more sharing.
Yeah, this happens all the time. It's what we call seller's remorse. So we do a big launch, the pricing is agreed, the RETA members get in, they get a stellar deal, which, you know, we make no bones about it. You know, when I sit down with the developer, it's clear from the get-go that this has to be a stellar deal. Nothing but that will cut muster. But then sometimes when the dust settles, the developer, maybe they've got partners and they start to get concerned that they've sold too cheap. And sometimes they feel that they've sold too cheap because 2 weeks later or 2 months later they're selling the same condo through their regular sales channels for maybe 100 grand more, maybe 130 grand more. So to some extent I understand how sometimes they'd feel this degree of seller's remorse. But with one big development group, in fact one of the biggest development groups on the Riviera Maya in Mexico, this became a bit of a thing between the four partners, because we did the deal, RETA members got in, of course the developer honored the deal, and then, you know, the partners said we should have a serious chat about whether this was a good idea, whether this was a good business. And so they flew in these expensive consultants who had really nice suits, and they had ties, and they had nice shoes, and they flew in from Monterrey, which is a big city in Mexico, and they pored over the numbers, and they met with the legal team, they met with the construction team, they met the financial analysts, and then they sat the partners down and they said, guys, you need to be doing more of this type of business. You're still getting close. You're almost hitting your same IRR numbers, which is internal rate of return, which is which is critical for developers, because it shows how quickly they're moving in terms of turning capital and generating a return on capital. But your risks are just so dramatically reduced. Your costs of financing are, you know, just a fraction of what they otherwise would be. And remember, a lot of the developers we work with are in places where when finance is required, when a bridge loan is required as part of the development process, they're paying 12 or 13%. So capital has a real value, here. So, I think maybe $87,000 later, and a few lunches, the consultant's report landed on the boardroom table with a thud, but the delivery was, guys, do more of these, not less.
So for anybody who's completely new to RETA, it might be useful if you just walk them through how do they get the most out of their membership? How does a RETA member actually get in?
So the very first thing I'd say is download the app and make sure you have activated push notifications so that you can get the alerts. Make sure you have whitelisted the emails that come in from me, because your emails and your alerts and your push notifications, that's where you'll hear about the deals, that's where you'll hear about the juicy stuff in the timely manner. Then the next big thing, and what you should be doing in parallel, is to set up an appointment with our concierge within the resources in the app and on our website. You can book an appointment with our concierge Nancy, or a member of her team, and they'll talk you through just how the members only launches work. They'll guide you to where the various resources are within our world, what deals are open, where in the Rolodex can you find various contacts, and then the big thing is just to start reading, just to start consuming. I mean, absolutely, read my book, read my latest book, read it every quarter. I read it every quarter. Because it's a reminder for me of the strategies I need to follow, the behaviors I need to follow, and then jump into the archives. I'd read the past issues, and then really profile yourself. Start to look at past deals and start to say, that was for me. The deal may be past. It could be a deal from 4 months ago or from 4 years ago, but you start to define the type of deal you want to invest in, and then you'll be ready. And it's really, really important to be ready. Have your ducks in a row in terms of having money. Have your ducks in a row in terms of your choice of lawyer. Just be ready, because you want to, when the right deal for you arrives, you want to be ready. It's no good to have your ducks in a row. You get your ducks in a row on the 1st of March and you say, great, my ducks are in a row, I'll act now. You don't want to do that, because you want your action to be oriented around the deal that's right for you, not a particular moment when you've got your bonus, or you've sold a property back home. Some event like this, you get ready, be ready, read, plan, and just immerse yourself in this world. To spend time on YouTube, spend time on listing sites like Idealista. Don't take my word for anything. I mean, I second guess and I rigorously put every theory, every deal, every idea I have. I get beaten up about it by my team, by myself, every single day. You should be the same. You should look for alternative perspectives, profile yourself, and be ready to act.
I know that spectacular, successful recommendations you've made to RETA members over the years have been after the global financial crisis in Ireland, Spain, and Portugal. And I know that in this book you have a big chapter all about basically a guide to crisis investing. One of the things that I kind of found most interesting in that was not every crisis is an opportunity. Like how you just look at crises and it's obviously worked out very well. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to know is with any crisis is things can always get worse. I mean, that is what I refer to in our office every day as the Venezuela example, because you go back 10 years ago, just when it looked like things couldn't get worse, they get worse. Then something else would happen and things would get worse again. So things can always get worse, and just because things are really, really bad, what's coming next? A lot of the time there can be just this bias that things will revert to a better time, but that's not always the case. So, in terms of our RETA life, I founded RETA in April 2008 when the developed world was just on the absolute brink of implosion. This was a time when people were afraid money wouldn't come out of the ATM machine. So in places like Ireland and Spain, we had a complete meltdown of the banking and real estate sectors, and things were horrific in Italy, in Greece, but our opportunity was limited to very, very specific things. So our opportunity, and the opportunity that has seen values rise by 3 and 4x with, that ignores very, very significant amounts of income in that period. Those opportunities were in Ireland, Spain, and to a lesser extent Portugal. So first of all, why Ireland? So first of all, prices fell like a stone. Prices fell dramatically. We saw very, very significant drops in value of as much as 60% plus on some particular fire sale units. Now, first lesson is this price drop doesn't happen overnight. In the case of Ireland, the real estate market actually started stalling around 2007, and it was 2011 before prices hit the floor. So in a crisis market, you have the stages of mourning. You have the optimism, you've the depression, you've the bargaining, and then you just have the point where people just throw their hands up in the air and it's just take it at any price. And that's the moment when you want to buy. In each of these cases, there was a trigger event. Something happened that unlocked the market. And again, remember, we're investing in other places, and in other places things don't work like they do back home. So whereas in the States you've got fast bankruptcy, people go bankrupt a lot, you have easy foreclosures, you have kind of liquidity in that bankruptcy process. In Europe, things are much more gummed up. And in the case of this crisis, it was particularly gummed up because everything went bankrupt. The developers went bankrupt, the banks went bankrupt, the governments were on the verge of bankruptcy. Everything is gummed up. So in Ireland, the trigger event was that there were foreign banks in Ireland with an exposure to Ireland, and Ireland was just so toxic for them, they just wanted to be out at all costs. So to get out, that meant they needed to sell assets. So they just started auctioning off apartments in central Dublin. So, apartments in Dublin, so what? Apartments in Dublin at 60% off a peak bubble price. Who cares? Well, the thing about Dublin of 2007, the thing about Dublin of 2001, the thing about Dublin of 2011, the thing about Dublin of 2021 and 2022 is that it is an absolute global hub for multinationals. Absolutely blow your mind when you look at the amount of foreign direct investment that has flooded into Ireland, with a lot of it focused in Dublin over the past decades, more than China. Ireland outstrips China as a place for US foreign direct investment. So you'd Facebook, you'd LinkedIn, you'd all these tech multinationals setting up European or even European, Middle Eastern and Asian hubs. So big corporate international hubs were flooding in, more jobs, more immigrants, more people, more demand for real estate, and the real estate just wasn't there. So it's so friggin' logical that prices popped, and I called it in 2010 before I even recommended buying, because I sat at a table with some major US private equity and hedge fund money that was coming in. They were spending billions, and we pored over demographic data, again the demand side, and then we poured over the supply side. And at that moment it was clear, even though Ireland was in the depths of this horrific crisis, that Ireland was heading for an absolute real estate catastrophe, a real estate catastrophe of scarcity, not of a real estate catastrophe of scarcity, not of crashing prices, because there was more demand coming, there weren't enough homes, and it's really, really difficult to create more homes because of all the red tape. Likewise, over in Spain, developers loaded up on credit. They didn't sell pre-construction because prices were increasing so fast that they wanted to capture all those gains that there had been during construction in previous years. And so they built inventory, and then when it came time to sell it in 2008 or 2009 or 2010, there were no buyers, like literally no buyers. So the developers went bankrupt, assets were moved to banks went bankrupt, assets were moved to Sarab, their bad bank. And finally, after an exhaustive process, starting in 2013, we started getting access to those condos straight from the banks at prices that were 80% less than pre-crisis pricing. So again, 80% off a condo, who cares? Like, that in itself doesn't mean anything. We can go to Venezuela and get 80% off a condo, or we can go to insert any other country basket case where there's a major crisis happening. But what was important about Spain is that on the south coast of Spain, there's a strip of land called the Costa del Sol, which is and has been for multiple decades and will continue for decades to be an internationalized place with perfect year-round weather that attracts mobile people from right across the world. So prices tanked, so prices jumped to exorbitantly frothy bubble levels. They dropped 80% if you bought right through these bank foreclosures. But the demand profile was still really, really strong and sustainable over the medium term. So then in the following years, we saw prices bounce back. We saw prices of the right deals bought from the bank double in as little as 2.5 years. So it's one of the most powerful buying opportunities, is to buy in the right crisis. But again, we need to kind of hang around for that, bide our time. We have over the past number of years, there have been crises. I've investigated crises all over the world. Venezuela is the prime and the most obvious example, but Argentina, and none of them have cut muster for me as an opportunity, because I just haven't seen how values are going to bounce back. How are things going to get back on track? So that's the key thing, is not just the crisis situation and how deep the discounts are, but what the pathway to a recovery looks like.
I asked you this before, and I know you talked about it in your book, your exit strategy, and I think your answer was something along the lines of, your focus is the entrance strategy. Get the entrance strategy right, and then you've got options when it comes to your exit strategy.
Yeah, I'm I sit around. That's my exit strategy. I sit around and wait for the knock on the door. And so at RETA, and at my core philosophy is, we make our money buying. It's the old adage. It couldn't be more true. So we make our money by buying the right thing in the right place at the right time. And then in terms of exiting, pretty much all the deals I sell out of, I sit around, I wait for the scarcity situation to bite, and that's when the offers start rolling in, and then I'm selling from a position of strength. I go into every deal fully planning and fully comfortable with a medium-term hold of at least 8 years. That's the type of horizon I take. Now, when prices rise so quickly and so fast that I think, maybe they're getting a bit frothy, when someone offers me more for a property than I think it's worth, that's the moment when I'll exit. That's the moment when I'll sell. But in this beat, particularly in these internationalized places, liquidity and demand can come in ebbs and flows. So you want to bide your time, you want to be open, and you want to be just sitting there kicking back, and when the scarcity crunch arrives, that's when I sell.
What do you say to someone just be nervous about buying real estate, selling it someplace like Mexico or anywhere overseas?
I would say you're absolutely dead right to be nervous. People have, for many people, investing in real estate is a scary and daunting experience. It can be even more so when it's done internationally. And what you need to do is to make sure you're buying the right thing and you're connected with the right vendors and with the right partners. And of course your lawyer there is maybe the most important and the most kind of critical piece there. So find the right lawyer, be guided by them, and don't take any shortcuts, and do your research. And people are right, absolutely, to be nervous, but this is within your control. It's within your control to decide, I'm going to work with the right people. It's within everyone's control to make sure they buy from the group with the right track record, and that they get a good lawyer and they follow follow that lawyer's advice. Now, there are a lot of horror stories out there, but so many of those horror stories, I feel really bad for the people, but a lot of the time people weren't even buying anything. The south of Spain is an example of a place where a lot of people were ripped off in the 80s and the 1990s, and there's still a lot of pending court cases, and people had claimed they thought they were buying homes and they were subsequently demolished. But the truth is that was just a plain old-fashioned scam. These people never bought a condo in many cases because it never existed as a condo. They never had the permits. A good lawyer will go a long way to mitigating those risks, and taking responsibility to look into the track record of who you're dealing with. Interesting thing about places outside the US and Canada is that reputation and track record is a lot more of a thing than it can be in the States. The States is so litigious, there's strong contracts, there's strong enforcement of contracts, companies are born, companies are disappear, but in a world where courts are far from timely or perfect, your reputation counts for a lot, and that's why reputation in countries like Costa Rica or Mexico or Panama is really, really important. I'll do the rounds. I won't invest with someone, or I won't buy a condo from a group if I don't know what their competitors say about them. And it's interesting. These developers, they exist in a context. They exist in a context where reputation is critical, where they need to hold their head up high at church or in the country club, and this is much more important in these countries than it can be, or than it is in the States. So really doing the research, and I think it's great fun talking to developers about their competitors, because it gives really good insights, because the good developers, the good players, even their arch competitors, and maybe someone who that's almost on the commercial battlefield, they're almost like arch enemies. When you talk to them, they'll at least begrudgingly credit the success of their competitors, and then you can just see their reaction when you ask about other people. They just dismiss them. That's a good tip. Hear what a developer's competitors say about them.
How do the local real estate agents and brokers in these places receive the news of RETA deals?
Not too well. Yeah. So the broker community of the markets where we're active, they're not fans of RETA, because essentially what we do is we take condos that they want to sell and we take it off the market, and we also offer it to people who they would also like to sell condos to, and we offer it at a much less price than they could ever get their hands on by working through the brokers. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm in no way broker bashing. I mean, I buy homes through brokers all the time. It's if I'm buying a home that I plan to live in or spend time or to resell, I'm going to use a broker. So I mean, obviously they have a clear place in the industry, but in terms of our RETA members only deal, we've completely disintermediated them. We've just cut them out. They bring no value to the equation. We cut them out, and in return RETA members get a much better price. So they're not too happy about that in many instances. And it's kind of funny, we have funny stories of RETA members meeting brokers, brokers with these crazy lies and ideas and concocted stories, and then RETA members get on to me and it's like, you won't believe what they told me. But I then I stepped back, I went through what I was offered as a RETA member and what RETA members were got, and it's just incredible about the value we add through our group buying power. And unfortunately for brokers, that cuts them out, and very often they're not happy. But we've also had some funny cases of launching a deal. I remember one kind of distinctly in Playa del Carmen, and Playa del Carmen is a place this has happened a lot because it's got a big broker community, and next thing the brokers start calling the developer and texting me, and it's like, what the hell is going on? I've got someone here in my room who tells me they've been offered a condo there for $193,000, but you've got nothing for less than $270,000, and we're there. Sorry, this is a RETA members only deal. It's off market. And then it becomes challenging because brokers try and get in and resell the inventory and do things that I'm not comfortable with. But that's the, I guess maybe if we weren't rubbing someone up the wrong way, I think we'd be doing something wrong, because there's a lot of unnecessary cost in the real estate system. And that's one of the this is what I'm really proud of. Our thing that I won't say most proud of, because the most proud of is identifying the deals, but then we make the deals even better by taking cost out. And we take cost out by pooling our group buying power, one negotiation with the developer, and then RETA members get the chance to act. Happens fast. I use lawyers in each of these places. I share the legal contact I use with RETA members, and typically they offer a very favourable rate to RETA members too.
Switch though. In the book, you have loads of great detail, tips and advice on how to basically maximise your rental income, or how to address your rental, how to get the best out of that. You talked about property managers, and maybe just take us through some of those tips.
Yeah, so just here it's just a very interesting, even though I bought my home here not for rental but as a place to live. When my wife and I moved in, primarily she put a bit of TLC, a bit of attention into making it homely, making it look less like a rental and more like a home. Freshly painted walls, just nice little touches, and pretty much overnight that tweaked something. The reviews went from being excellent to being out of this world, and in this world and today, your reviews are a proxy for everything. So you want to get great reviews. You get great reviews because that's your marketing. So how do you get great reviews? You furnish it appropriately and fully. You make it nice. You make it homely. You give it personal touches without it being overly personal. So you make it feel homely and personal without family photos and that type of thing that could make someone feel uncomfortable. You have it fully equipped with everything that's needed, and then you go the extra length and you figure out what is it that I can do for my guests that I'm not bound, that I've no obligation to do. What would I like when I arrive at a short-term rental? Well, I can tell you what I like. I like water, coffee, bananas, just basic stuff, because often we arrive at a short-term rental after travel, we're tired. Anticipate the needs with clear instructions, Wi-Fi codes that are intuitive, a TV that works, a bed that's comfortable, just the basics of what you would like as a renter, and deliver that reliably with responsiveness to inquiries. So everything feeds into the reviews. The reviews are the proxy for everything. Get good reviews, that's your marketing. Boom, end of story. The better reviews, the better your marketing, the more you get pushed up the algorithms of Airbnbs and bookings.com, and it becomes just a virtuous cycle.
What about property?
Yeah, so getting the right property manager is absolutely critical. I like to work with property managers that are kind of owner managed, that are small stroke medium sized, that you're dealing with the owner. They're competent, they have a solid team, but they're very hands-on. And from time to time, you're going to have problems if you follow that strategy like me. The problems that arise are that the property manager gets really good, then they get big, then they get really bad. So, you need to stay on top of your property manager. You need to be clear about your expectations. You need to be responsive to their needs. And if they start to not perform, or if performance lags, you need to move fast, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to hang around for 6 or 9 months with lower occupancy just because the property manager isn't performing. Now, it's very important to understand and realize how the incentives can be asymmetric between you and a property manager, because what a property manager often might want is capacity for those peak times. So a property manager might take on a huge number of properties to manage because they know they can fill it in Christmas, in Easter, and in summer holidays. But they might have a glut of inventory for the rest of the year, for the shadow season. So you need to make sure that you're well aligned with your property manager, and that's not always the case as property managers get bigger.
Yeah, with the rise of long-term rentals as a contracted function for investors, but what do these? So we're talking about short-term rentals now. What do the long-term renters want?
The long-term renters are pretty much looking for the same thing. So in places where there's a really hot long-term rental market is where, with really strong yields and high rents, is where people can live the resort or the vacation town or the beach town life day in and day out. So that's like the homes that I live in are also star performing short-term rentals, because what I'm looking for from my homes is the golf, the beach, the nice restaurant, all of that on my doorstep, the gym, all these things. So I love the play of buying homes and condos that will appeal to both the short and the long-term rental market, and then cherry picking which business you want to be in or how to mix and match it. Now, a slight kind of aside to that is that in some markets you can do really, really well in the long-term market for real estate that's somewhat kind of second tier or secondary compared to the short-term rental market. So take the example of Placencia in Belize. It's just this really narrow spit of land, goes down into the Caribbean. You've got lagoon front on one side, Caribbean on the other. Now, the short-term rental market for waterfront property is very, very strong, pretty much maxed out. Remote workers, Zoom boomers, all these folks coming, these folks are willing to rent homes that aren't on the water and are in locations that otherwise wouldn't be appealing, wouldn't have great appeal as a vacation rental. So this is a real kind of hack to look at and to see about playing, which is maxed out short-term rental markets, places of great scarcity that are attracting remote workers, and what's the overlooked real estate that people haven't been paying attention to that you could buy and rent for that market. Again, the last time I was in Placencia, it was before COVID, and some of these homes were being built for like the bank manager of the Belizean bank who was moving to town for this kind of middle upper class of Belizeans who were working in town. Maybe they're managing a hotel or something like that. But now that's been blown out of the water by these tech workers, remote workers coming from right across the US and Canada and wanting to be here and to work, or to be in Belize and work remotely.
You introduced me to this idea of moat real estate. I think that might be a good one to explain.
Yes, when I think of moats, so the biggest champion of moats in pop economics and pop business, I guess, is Warren Buffett. And the idea is very simple, that we want to buy something, we want to buy a business that has protections, that can be protected from competition. So Warren Buffett, likes Coca-Cola, he likes to drink it, he likes it as a business, and Coca-Cola's moat is its brand. So, Richard Branson can make his own dark coloured, what he calls sugar water, but it hasn't dislodged Coca-Cola, because Coca-Cola has one of the world's most powerful brands. Another moat a business can have might be physical infrastructure, that a business that, a railroad, for example, a railroad that businesses moving coal from a mine to a port, that's got a pretty big moat, because it's going to take a huge amount of capital to create a competing way of getting coal from the mine to the port. In real estate, we have moats like that. We have moats like that in terms of brands. We have moats But we also have a much more dramatic form of moat, and that's a real physical moat. So, you look at Dubrovnik. I was just there a couple of months ago, and you look at the old town of Dubrovnik. From a supply perspective, that's protected. You've got these big, thick walls, and then you've got the old town, and you can't make any more old town, and you can't build up because it's not allowed. It's protected. You can't make any more of it, and you can't recreate it. This is all that it is. But kind of jumping to a more modern context, in places like Playa del Carmen, there's a community called Coruscant, which is on the edge of Fifth Avenue in Playa del Carmen. You've got what I consider to be the nicest beach in all of Playa del Carmen, an excellent golf course, and you've got a community that's built around about 800 acres of land that just cannot be replicated. It's protected because no other community can have that land with that beach, with that proximity to Playa del Carmen, with that low density. It just cannot be recreated. It's got physical protections because there's a highway on one side and there's the Caribbean on the other, and you have the city of Playa del Carmen on one side, and then you've got another resort community on the other. It's finite. So we want to buy the finite once demand is strong and growing for it, because then as demand grows, it's just back to fundamentals of economics. There's more people looking to buy, more people looking to rent. That thing which you just cannot recreate or create any more of it.